believe that the challenge ultimately came down to a sort of positioning focus. We tried to educate a too broader audience on mindfulness, which created a real barrier to adoption. I think in hindsight, my reflection is that we had people come to us with very specific challenges around ADHD or trichotillomania, if I'm saying it right, it's hair plucking, who had real benefits from using the tool. And I think reflection on that would have been to really go to those communities and really speak to them, understand more and serve them. And that would have been, if I flick back here, of deliberately defining very specific market and finding out how to be the best for that group. And because they really care about that solution, I think that would have been really the root for the Pebble to thrive. So that was us. I think the other side was we realized we ended up in an e-commerce business, and we weren't e-commerce people. We wanted to really help individuals, so that we transitioned on. Sophie, over to you.
Yeah, so this was around the time. So Alex and the products had already been created when I joined Moment Company. And it was a perfect storm in 2020. We all know what happened then. So trying to create a physical product at the time of COVID and Brexit really impacted obviously physical product development, and also just our ability to meet people, go to events, talk to people in a human capacity. But it also therefore presented huge opportunities. And also at that point, mindfulness and understanding of mental well-being became even more mainstream. So as Alex mentioned, we evolved the product from product only, and we started doing a lot more course and online content creation. And then we realized that the benefit was not actually in the product, it was in the moment itself and how we could make people feel. And then that also meant, as a result of sharing online content, we sort of somewhat became the faces behind the products, which then started to sort of take over a little bit. And from my perspective, I thought, well, I'm not a CEO working behind a product business that it's in mindfulness. I now need to lean into this too. So I personally then studied and took in mindfulness courses, meditation, NLP, generative change, now hypnotherapy, and really kind of dived into being able to offer a breadth of entry points for people who just wanted to feel better. And I think one of our challenges at this point, following on from what Alex said about our audience being so broad, is that I also think that we assumed people knew when they needed to take a moment. They just needed a reminder, and they just needed a reminder to do it every day. And actually what we realized is the education barrier was bigger and broader than we imagined. And also, purely from a commercial perspective, speaking to individuals is both extremely time consuming and also very expensive. And so around 21, 22, as everybody was somewhat going back to work, getting back out again, we noticed there was another trend, and that was around the responsibility for workplaces to really show that they were looking after their people, and we were facing new types of stress. So we worked with a brand agency. We did lots of things around refining our voices to include at work with our mindful moments and our mindful pebbles being at the heart of our story. But we were still very much talking about what we did and how to use and how to be mindful, and not really talking about why anyone should care. And because of that, what's really interesting was that it was just a little bit too conceptual for workplaces to buy. And a big part of that was because we didn't really know who to sell to. And so, Alex, if you want to jump on to the next slide, the biggest change that we have made in just this last 6 months, I would say, and we've never been clearer or more aligned behind the approach that we have, is that we realized that in order to be something that people wanted to buy, we had to really focus on the outcome. So how will adopting our techniques, our methods, our coaching, our program and systems, what does it mean to your business? What does it mean to the individuals? And then even drilling down on that even further, we realize it's about hitting specific challenges, specific problems with a solution. And so now we've really kind of shifted that focus to not be about the what and the how, it's about why. Why should you care about this stuff? Why should you care that your happy humans are coming into work every day, and what does it mean to the bottom line? So now everything we do is demonstrable, whether it's in the moment or tracked over time, and that we're speaking to business owners, no longer HR managers or L&D budget holders. We're speaking to business owners, founders, project leaders who have a specific need around communication challenges, alignment of teams and goals, and something tangible that we can then show and impact through our techniques. So at the heart of everything we do remains our mindful approach. We bring in, which we forgot to do this evening, we bring in a grounding moment at the start of each of our sessions. We get leaders and CEOs doing breath work. Alex and I did a session in Vegas last month where we actually had them doing breath work to Lenny Kravitz, which was a first, but we try and be playful and interesting in the way that we don't overwhelm individuals with, you know, the jargon, or for some people that don't feel comfortable with the terminology that we use, but we really focus on that outcome and how they're going to feel and why they should care about coming together and aligning with their teams. So that is where we have come to today.
Awesome. Thanks, Fee. And thanks for the reminder. I think we should
We should
now. Now we've thrown a
cover
load of information at you. It's even more appropriate that we all just land even better into this space. So if you'd like to join me, we'll run a short coach process, which stands for centered, open, aware, connected, and holding. It may be familiar to some of you, it may not, but there's nothing you need to know about it to get involved. So I just invite you to make yourselves comfortable. You can keep your eyes open or closed for this process. You can keep your cameras on, or you may turn them off if you're more comfortable. And I just invite you to start by taking a slow, deep breath in and out and relax. Another deep breath in and out and relax. Another deep breath in and out and relax. Now just letting your breath return to its natural rhythm and bringing your attention gently down to the area around your belly button, your center, the first C. Just breathing gently to this point. This is the center of our body, our center of gravity. It's also the place of our gut mind, where we just know everything is often a bit calmer down here when compared to what's happening in our head. And it's nice when we bring our attention down here and focus down here, we can find that peace within our inner world. I invite you to gently bring your attention up to your chest area. You can put your hands here if you like to bring your attention. It's up to you. You're going to breathe into the chest. And this is the O for openness. Breathing out. Just breathing in. And here with openness, we're going to be open to the breath coming in. Let's let it flow in, out to your shoulders, down. But I'd also invite you to be open to the ideas that come up today, the ideas that are shared by people in the group. Open to your own ideas that might come up, and if you feel comfortable sharing them, popping them in the chat. but just being open to let things flow physically, also in your mind. Now gently moving up to a point just above your head. And this is A for awareness. Just bringing awareness to our surroundings, where you are right now. Any noises you can hear, sounds, I should say, might be noises. Any sounds, anything you could smell, perhaps a taste. What do you notice in your environment? Just becoming aware, gently aware of that. With that awareness, we're now going to connect. So this is an interesting one where it can be helpful to use your breath again. So if you breathe in, just following that breath in from the outside, that awareness in, down, through your chest, through the openness, keeping open and down to your center. And as you breathe out, just following it, connecting it back out. So we're connecting the inner and the outer world. It might feel a bit strange, but just give it a go. There's no specific outcome here. We're just getting a sense of connecting that inner and outer world. Breathing in gently and out. We're balancing our inner and our outer world. And the final, the H for holding, I should say, is just to stop trying to do anything now, just to sit and notice how you feel. Please keep breathing. Just to sit and hold. And now gently in your own time, open your eyes. Move if you need to, stretch, and yourselves back into the room. This is one of our favorites to use, especially when you've got people coming in from different parts of the world, or even into a room from different previous meetings. And some people might be really in their heads and some people might be completely internal. This sort of helps balance everyone out and connect everyone together. So thank you for joining me for that exercise. Fee, is there anything you'd like to add at this point?
No, I'd like to invite some discussion, I think.
Yeah, any comments, questions before we specifically jump into the challenges?
Can I raise a question on something that I think Fee said, that you made a change and decided to approach business owners rather than HR managers. Was that because of the size of the organizations that you were working with, or because you found that the professionals were a block?
I would say it was a combination of both. We really find that our sweet spot, I guess because of our backgrounds as well, is in that scale up environment. So, teams that are growing, they're thriving, often with a leadership team that has been inherited because they've just been there from the start, and find themselves in positions where they haven't really been given any personal development or any training in the past. So those organizations tend not to have bloated HR teams or training and development, but they do have real tangible challenges that they need to overcome. So by speaking directly to, a project leader or a head of sales or the founder of the business, we find that they were able to make faster decisions. They can more feel the pain points because they're more closely connected to it. I'm sure we've all experienced HR directors kind of don't know what's going on in the business. And if they do, it's because they're having to exit someone out. They're almost involved at the too late moment rather than when, we can still make and deliver that change. So project leaders, as I say, sales directors, those kind of people are the ones that we have found most open to having a conversation and having the immediate need. Because what Alex and I also discovered over the last 5 years is you can speak to everybody. You can speak to all the HR directors you want, but if they haven't identified a need for what you do in that moment, it's just a nice conversation and it doesn't go anywhere. So by identifying those people that are like, we have a challenge, we've got a project we need to deliver, we've got a leadership team that's struggling, then that becomes an easier conversation.
Yeah. And the last piece, which also I actually got from a session with the Workplace community that Mark ran is back, which was around learning about the budget holders themselves. The last piece of that is who's holding that money. And the HR people often can do or have sway, but often don't. So it's the people with the pain and the cash looking for. And so, yeah.
Yeah, just to emphasize that the HR is generally a cost center with very, very limited budget that will look to internalize a solution and see what they can put together amongst their general resources rather than pay for something externally, whilst a C-suite or a divisional director will have significant budget to sign off without reference. And thus, those types of conversations where they originate are better held at the senior level that then instructs HR that a plan's about to come to hatch, rather than the other way around. I think it is all about where the budget sits, and unfortunately, HR have little to play with.
Yeah, that's certainly been our experience. That leadership team within themselves, I've just recently had people say, oh, well, as a leadership team, we've got budget for that, because they've been tasked with finding new solutions or bringing in ideas into the boardroom as well. So they are definitely closer to the cash, but also they're closer to the problem as well. So I think those two things, and need an immediate solution so they look good. So we're very happy to make the leadership team look good in front of their bosses as well.
And that's who you're positioning for. I think connecting through is like, who's this messaging for? Because you can position for HR or you can position for these people. And I think one thing, certainly, when I remember after the first session, that session with Mark, being like, oh my God, but how do you get to these people? They're hard to reach. How do I position myself? How do I speak to them? And it's so much harder. It's much easier to get in touch with an HR person. But you then realize that it's because it's easy, you can have loads of not that helpful conversations with lots of HR people, which takes up a lot of time. And the good ones will send you in the right direction if you ask the right questions. I'm not saying avoid HR people, but I wouldn't position for them, and I wouldn't invest all your time in trying to use them to close the deal. And actually, I'd say, I don't know. I don't have any hard stats, but I don't feel now that we target the budget holders more, that I spend any more time trying to reach them. I genuinely don't. I think we spent the same amount of time or less useful time doing the other way before. So there's definitely there was a fear for me as well around reaching out to these more senior people, which I've worked on and continue to work on, just to be like, because the HRs also are happy to speak to everyone. They like to hear new stuff because they're great like that. And the other people are time poor and may not want to speak to you. But that's where the value is. That's where you can help them and they can help you. And so, yeah. Cool. So, yes.
Man, did you have a...
Yeah, thanks for the insights. It's quite refreshing what you just shared. I want to circle back to what was that Pete was asking, is that the size of the organization you approach that do play a role there? Because I guess in a bigger organization like multinational, there will be many more layers in the structure. Perhaps it's harder to get into those level of executives, but it's hard.
Yeah. So in our positioning journey, sorry, did you want to go, Fee?
No, I go.
But just say, in our positioning journey, we definitely have done that and said I'd say we are best equipped to work with scale up small and medium-sized businesses. But there was a point at which we said we don't work with large multinationals because of all what we're talking about. But what we realized is that within large multinationals are these small components, these business units, which have a CEO and a COO and they function kind of in the same way. And so we intentionally now only speak to that unit. We actually have no interest in the multinational. We operate inside one, and it's chaotic. In a more spread way.
My most recent conversation is with the global COO, who has a very specific challenge with a very specific team in the UK. So there are, it's all about that access to that individual who has got that felt pain point. And so obviously to roll out to 700 people, what we do would be more challenging than we're set up to right now. But we're still having that multinational big organization conversation. It's just segmented into smaller pain points. And our goal is always to have the longevity of that relationship. So ideally, you have that one conversation about that one group, that one team or project, which then becomes an ongoing conversation of another team, another market, another challenge. And that really is the goal for me for this current conversation I'm having. I don't want to eat the elephant all in one go, but I'll certainly start taking chunks and nibbles.
This is really helpful, I think, for the context of this conversation. So I challenge that a little bit, because if we shifted our positioning to target like a multinational like that, I think we'd get lost, because we'd suddenly be like, we need to find these CEOs, these COOs, and get to them at the top, and they're even harder to get to. So I think for a positioning sense, we'll still have a conversation, like I'm speaking to a high street bank, but I'm only interested in this risk team with this specific problem with a leader who has a budget. I'm not interested in the bank itself, because we can speak to, and this then comes into where we've been effective, we can speak to kind of cultural shift with business units of up to a certain size. And so we need to kind of stay a little bit in our lane. So I won't rabbit on anymore, but I hope that's kind of helpful, Lan, in terms of answering or speaking to your question, at least, if not answering it.
Yeah, it's very helpful. And thank you. And I'm just wondering, perhaps I keep the question short. When you cover in the sessions, but also in terms of what are the anchor points when you go to do the selection of approaching a particular set of customers or potential customers, so to say. You already spoke about the size, the company or the local units as one of those. Is there maybe, are you going to talk about it as well? It's like maybe you have some other things that you consider when you're going to approach someone?
So in our positioning, how we define specific ways in which we define our target market, in addition to the scale.
Yeah.
I can have a crack at that, Fiona.
I'll jump in.
I would say some of the things we've shared are quite concrete now. So that kind of, business units of 50 up to 50, we know we can, like, there are certain things that are concrete. One of the things that is, and this now speaks to the evolution of our positioning, because there's a load that is not concrete, which we're looking to firm up to become more specific and define more. One thing I would say, I think we might have spoken about it last time, but is not concrete, but so important, and what we seek, and we don't know yet how to specifically find them, but is these leaders who have had some sort of experience with their own well-being, mental health. They've had some sort of mindfulness training. They in some way they have experienced, they've crossed over into our world, and not our world of business transformation or positive change, but the world underneath, the one that we're all gathered here for, the one that we know is powerful. And so we're trying to seek out those people, and that happens through when we have conversations, when we get referrals. We're trying to find people who kind of have a little bit of a bridge like us, who understand the business problem, but have felt some experience, some positive experience, and that it's quite intangible, as you can probably tell. And we're working on how you find more of them. But I'd say that's one, probably in terms of a key thing we look for, apart from these other things. That's what we're looking to find. Fee, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, and I would say from a very, very practical perspective, LinkedIn is our key tool for everything. So both, creating consistent content and a consistent messaging, commenting, sharing, following people that we want to work with, that we, to Alex's point, have those attributes of our ideal client, and just getting our message, our connection front and center. I did something just the other month where I just went through LinkedIn and looked at everybody, and I live in Brighton. I looked at everybody in East Sussex and started to make connections with people doing similar work to us, but with a slightly different angle, just to understand how we can build community. Because I believe that there's space for everybody, and we all have different types of offerings. So if we can just create more conversation, then that, plants the seed of what we all do when we're all out there, speaking to potential clients. So I use LinkedIn as like my major a tool for communicating both what we do, but also for seeking those ideal clients. But it's just about showing up and being visible every day.
Thank you.
And podcasting. Thanks, Mark. Yeah, lots of podcasts, talking. We do podcasts. So yeah, just spread it.
I was just pointing out there's a hand to my left or that way.
Indeed.
But they're conversations with Alex and I realized, and it sounds obvious, but we realized the more conversations you have, the more conversations you have, and you get further along the line. And I'm just sitting here in my grey cell by myself going, I wonder why I'm not talking to anyone. Well, I need to get out there. And if I can't physically get out there, I need to be out there and on LinkedIn, and I need to be more visible in communities, and I need to understand what those pain points are of those project leaders and CEOs. So it's just about speaking to people at the end of the day has made the biggest difference. And it's helped us refine our positioning as well, because we'll get back to each other and say, the lean in moment was this time, and the aha moment was that, not just for them, but how we feel about delivering what we do now as well. And the more you can practice that, the more you will naturally refine it. And when it starts to come naturally, that's when you've got it right.
Thank you.
Dean.
Yeah, I'm gonna give a space now to Dean. I think has been with us a while. Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks very much. Just a very quick question. I was going to ask a similar question to Pete actually around the involvement or not of HR and learning and development, but I think you've answered that question. Just curious around, I can imagine a business leader with a problem would be seeking to try almost any solution. Do you face any sort of skepticism or pushback from those perhaps in the team rather than the business leader? And in what way does that manifest?
Yes, and both sometimes. Sometimes we have a CEO that we work with right now that was very vocal at the beginning, saying, I don't understand any of this and I don't feel the benefit. And now he has Alex on speed dial for whenever there's a situation arises where he needs a bit of support or help. So yes, we do face skepticism. I think it would be unrealistic to imagine that everybody's at the same level, particularly in a team of, say, 25 people. There'll be some practices and some things that we do that make people uncomfortable, and there'll be others that people absolutely love. So we try and vary what we do in a group setting, but we also do manage a lot of our conversations through one-to-one. So we'll adapt what we do accordingly. But from a leader perspective, we also realize that we got to show results. And leaders and decision makers and the cash holders, they want to be able to demonstrate that what they did and what they introduced had some form of impact. So in order to get around that initial skepticism, we make sure that we run surveys, we show them the data, and we highlight where impact is starting to be felt across their organization, and that can be anecdotal as well as, you know, qual and quant kind of insights.
Yeah, I think that skepticism often is around the unknown, and then there's all the other stuff up the back of that in terms of, you know, the practices that we do and the closeness they perceive them to the mainstream or acceptable in the workplace.
Yeah.
And that piece as well is around the language evolution that certainly we've had. And again, this was something that chatted with Mark with over the years, is just the language of business. And we kind of take people on a journey. We start you off in complete business speak, and then, you know, in a month or two,
I'll be hypnotizing you and talking about, you know, crystals.
So I think there's a transition. I think we do. There is skepticism everywhere, but there's an awareness of needing to transition people towards it. But I think that's where, I think, as Fee mentioned at the start of our latest slide, around kind of like rather business solution type language and at the start, because that's really what that is what you're there for. We're not, like, mindfulness on its own is mindfulness, and that can be great in a sense, but they're paying to solve whatever they're paying to solve. And I think I had a conversation yesterday. I won't go too long on this, but we were talking about, someone's got a really interesting medical device, and they'd found that actually that getting into the medical community was a nightmare, but sport community for healing, really good. And the business community also very open, because ultimately they want performance and success. And so egos were out of the way, a lot of stuff. I'm not saying there's no egos in business, but ultimately, if you could give them a sense and a feeling of this repair and this success, they will down very quickly. And I just took that as a great kind of metaphor for positioning. Really, is like, how do you help them win? Maybe is another way to look at this, rather than go from there and then underneath you ladder all your hows and specific methods and approaches. I don't know if that answers the question.
No, that's really helpful. So can I just ask a question that sounds cheeky, but it's not meant to be? Have you ever come across a problem you can't solve for a business leader who wants to use your services?
I would say we don't know how to solve any of their problems. They are the ones that ultimately need to solve their problems. We have approaches to help them think differently and find their way. So that's maybe a cheeky answer to your cheeky question.
So I suppose, do they feel they've had value from you? Do you ever have situations where they don't feel that?
Yeah. Because we only engage over a longer time frame, we allow room for failure, I would say. This is not really talked about this before. This is kind of just how I would think about answering that question. So I would say, yes, absolutely. There are plenty of times where things we try together as a partner with leader or leadership group don't work exactly as well or as planned. But the point of how we approach things is to understand why they didn't work, and have enough time that we're not there for like just 1 hour and they go away and they're like, well, that didn't work. All that mindfulness stuff's rubbish, because we all know it doesn't. It's little and often over time. Like it's not how anything works. That's probably the deepest truth we've got, right? You can't create lots of value in an hour, really, for pretty much anything. Maybe something, I don't know. But to answer your question, yes, lots of stuff. But I think on average, it works really well, because people, it's, you know, when you help people even just gain new awareness, which is so powerful, that is a small win. And when you can ladder up a couple of those over a medium time frame, it feels beneficial. so that's probably how I would answer that in the most honest way and non-salesy way.
That's great. Thank you very much. Thank you.
I think as well, Alex, just to reflect on that, we try to also be open about that. You might feel nothing. You might not feel a change today. You might next week, you might over time, but know that change is happening. And I think, there's something really powerful in that suggestion of them just being there, showing up, being open to kind of starting the process with us, that they're already kind of making the change. So, we always kind of, there's different ways you can measure that success and that engagement. And I think, or their perceived success and engagement. So having really clear expectations up front on all sides is really important to know what success feels like and means within the kind of duration of the engagement, but also kind of planting the seed of, you might not feel anything, but know that change has happened it can be really powerful and gets them off thinking in a new direction as well.
Yeah. Yeah. You're sort of priming people for the change.
Yeah.
With that. Julia, I'm going to come to you in 1 second. I'm conscious of time. I just wonder if there is I know that these questions that are being asked are specifically to answer problems that people potentially are facing or curiosities. If anyone does have a specific positioning question that we wanted to put into the group that they want to either chuck in the chat or raise their hand about, do that, and we'll talk about that after Julia. Julia, yeah, please.
Hi. Oh, we can't hear
We've
you.
lost you. I think you're on mute.
So sorry. Is that, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about what the whole positioning piece was for you. It sounds like you really had a moment where you got very specific. I work for the Sussex Mindfulness Centre, and we're based in, we're part of the NHS. We have a research wing, and we are also and have done some mindfulness training with organizations, and want to do more of it. But and we, of course, because of where we're sitting, there's benefits and definitely negatives about being, part of the NHS in terms of how we're perceived. And yeah, so I'd quite like to understand a little bit more about your process in terms of positioning, because that might help me kind of unpack a bit more about, what we need to be thinking about. Because there's no point in fighting the characteristics that we are.
I mean, the main thing, actually, we've got a slide it can flash up quickly. My suggestion would be, I know, Mark, you're not a fan of this one, but there are, this is Julia Durnford's sets of positioning steps. And what we found helpful was you'll have all your kind of content and everything about you and potentially who you want to speak to and what's valuable about what you do. I would seek a framework that you like. So maybe have a look online for at a few different frameworks. ChatGPT might be quite helpful for this if you can. If you have access, and yeah, have a look at maybe three or so frameworks and look at the steps that they sort of take you through. And I think that's where we started, and that's where when we went from, oh, we're just branding or we're just marketing, to how do we systematically look at the steps for positioning. We followed a framework, and that's really what helped us start to split it from being one big thing into a few sections that laddered together. That would be my advice to get started.
Great, thank you.
And then it becomes iterative and sort of ongoing. So you'll do it, and then you'll have an output, and then you'll speak to someone and you'll share what it came out, and they'll say stuff back to you. You'll be like, oh, that didn't land, and oh, that did. And then that then becomes, and we've revisited a framework, I don't know, maybe like twice fee, maybe. We don't do a huge overhaul all the time, but we're constantly refining.
Excellent, thank you.
Cool. I think you're welcome. There might be some questions here.
Oh, I just answered one around, do you need to pay for LinkedIn Premium? Is it a must? And I've just said, no, we haven't necessarily used Premium. Sometimes Premium is great if you've got a really big mass outreach, and you want to be able to kind of target and bring in lots of different contacts. I've actually found it's been more helpful. As I said before, I focus just on the Brighton area, being more focused, more targeted, more specific in who I was reaching out to, and sending personalized messages and or following actually produce better results for me doing it that way. And yeah, as Mark said, having a good profile, making sure it's up to date, posting regularly, bringing your face and your message to life, and a bit of a personality behind the brand and the page has really been more impactful.
Awesome. And Susan's got a cool question here. Kate's got a good question in here. How would you manage positioning aimed at individuals rather than organizations? I think this links back to my answer would link back to that early Moment Pebble slide when we were very much a business to consumer business. And it's really about, what groups the individuals who you want to speak to together. What are the commonalities? That's where I would start. But again, you can kind of look at, a positioning framework will have that part. But I would say that's the first thing. That was the big mistake we made. Maybe I'd like to think it wasn't greed that we tried to capture the whole global market. I think we genuinely believed that we wanted to help a lot of people, and that to do that, we needed to be broad, and that we needed to be open and just get out there to everyone. And but the truth is, you really want to be, and you don't have to stay very narrow, but and usually if you think about who you're speaking to and who could advocate for you right now, that's a good starting point. If you're really at ground zero, I would think about, what do you care about most? Why did you get into this? And who are the people that could be was it a burnout? Was it a condition? What was it? And then, is that a group of people who you can speak their language, you can connect with? That would be my very basic initial advice in terms of individuals. But really, the main thing would be, try and find a specific group. And if they've got industry bodies, look at them, see how they position themselves to the market. And if you can model that, if it appears successful, you can test out modeling how those industry bodies position themselves and see if that kind of thing works, and speak to them, get in touch maybe with the industry bodies. That's just some thoughts off the cuff. But it's very tempting to go broad, and I would highly advise not.
Who created Cam said that one of the challenges was his customers were everyone that had a mind, which is great when you were telling a story to a bunch of investors, because they're like, wow, that's a big addressable market. It's a nightmare when you're actually trying to then market to that, because it's everyone.
And all minds are different.
Joe.
Joe.
You're on mute.
Hi, Joe, you're on mute.
No. I might just quickly ask Debbie's question, if that's okay while we wait.
Yeah.
Do you find in-person interactions are more acceptable and effective? I do almost 100% of my interactions are virtual, because our clients are all over the world. So most of the sessions that we do are actually virtually. We bring our leadership teams together to do offsites, but a lot of our one-to-one and coaching is all done through Zoom. It's great when we can get in person, and usually the deal making is best in person, but I would say a large proportion these days is virtual.
Yeah. If we can kick off in person, we always try to create that rapport, and you have a sense of the non-verbal communication, the rest of the body, basically. It's kind of helpful to have tuned into. But from there, I think we deliver all the value we need to virtually if we need to. And we can be more cost effective that way as well.
You did a session in your house a few weeks ago.
I had people around
First.
to my house, to kick off a strategy session because the venue they booked mucked up, and that was kind of cool. I'm conscious of time, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, we're probably, well, we're nearly up, time's nearly up, but are there any burning questions that we can finish off with? Anyone have any final question? If not, we'll.
Can you unmute me? Can you unmute Joe?
Did you do that, Sally? Don't I have the power? Maybe if you type your question, Joe.
Yeah, let's do that.
It's not
I'll
allowing
share my
me to
screen
do
quickly
this.
just with the last bit of positioning, just to give you a sense of what we're doing right now. So again, to further define where we are, we're sort of saying what we're not, traditional consulting. All of these things have value. You know, big picture strategy, you get these super experts from global businesses. They come in and it can be fantastic. What we hear from the market, the weakness is it's a very high cost. And it often fails for lasting change. They kind of come in, big report on the desk, go away, and then it doesn't really transform. Second piece, the other side, what we're not, traditional leadership training. This is really important, upskilling your team, building future capability. The weakness here is that the return on investment relies on participants actually applying the insights consistently within the workplace. Now, you may not want to agree with what I'm saying here, but I'm just positioning us, by the way, in your minds. And so we kind of sit in this space, which we call the co-ownership approach. The value is that it's immediate problem solving. We go in and we work with you over a period of time on live problems, and we do transform. It's not possible for things to be the same at the end of the time we've worked, whether you've had exactly what you thought would happen, maybe not, but there will have been change. The weakness we find with what we do is it requires co-ownership and ongoing participation from leaders, which whittles out a lot of leaders because they want change but don't necessarily want to do it. Maybe, I'm not sure. I won't get into that space, but I just wanted to show this. We've put traditional consulting, traditional leadership training, and positioned us slightly differently as an experiment, which we're speaking to people about now, but just to give you a sense of the kind of evolution and how we're testing what we're doing in the moment.
Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for your questions, but thank you, Alex and Fiona. It's been a wonderful session. The last hour has just flown by. I could sit here and listen to it for another few hours, but I'm sure you've got better things to do than talk to me. But anyway, thank you.
Breakfast.
Thank you so much.
We're going to eat breakfast, Pete.
Yeah, go and eat breakfast and do the school run, no doubt. But
yeah, that's after breakfast. Yeah, indeed.
Thank you all very much, and keep an eye out for our next session. But thanks again, guys.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your participation to make it. That's what made it work. So thanks everyone.
Thanks, everyone.